Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The 30th Economic Forum in Karpacz, also known as the Davos Forum of Central and Eastern Europe, is in full swing. Thousands of politicians and representatives of the business world have gathered in southern Poland to discuss the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead of Europe following the COVID-19 pandemic. Politicians, experts and NGO representatives from all over the world have come to Karpacz. Among them are also presidents of the largest Polish companies, including state-owned enterprises. The event abounds in discussions concerning the perspectives of economic development, contemporary challenges and overcoming crises. This year's leading topic is rebuilding world economies after the COVID-19 pandemic. Jacek Sasin, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of State Assets, appeared at the Economic Forum and spoke about the transformation to a green economy. For this process to succeed, we need to be backed by society. I can't imagine such a complex process taking place against public opinion. During the event, there was also an award for the Company of the Year. The award went to KGHM Polskie Miedz, one of the world's leading copper mining companies. We plan to have at least 50% of our energy coming from so-called auto production. This will allow us to cut costs significantly, since there will be no emissions and distribution costs, as it will all be done by our own facilities. During this year's forum, nearly 200 events will take place, in which 3,000 people from Poland, Europe, Central Asia and the United States are expected to participate. Mexico's Supreme Court unanimously ruled on Tuesday that penalising abortion is unconstitutional, a major victory for the country's pro-abortion movement, just as parts of the United States enact tougher laws against the practice. The decision, in the world's second biggest Roman Catholic nation, means that courts can no longer prosecute abortion cases and follows Argentina's historic legalisation, which took effect earlier this year. The ruling stemmed from a 2018 case in the northern state of Coahuila that challenged a local criminal law. From now on, it will not be possible to prosecute any woman who aborts without violating the criteria of the court and the Constitution. From now on, there is a new path to freedom, clarity and dignity, and which respects all those who are pregnant, especially women. Today is one more step in this historic struggle for equality, for dignity, and for fully exercising their rights. It also comes as a growing feminist movement has taken to the streets in Mexico to press for change, including calls to end anti-abortion laws on the books in much of the country. Mexico, with some 100 million Catholics, is the largest Roman Catholic country after Brazil. The Catholic Church opposes all forms of abortion procedures. The solution is not abortion. The solution is to help them, for them to understand, to help them carry the baby to birth. And if it is not wanted, then to put it up for adoption or to find alternatives. But not death. Death is not an alternative. Death will always be destruction. Tuesday's vote establishes a mandatory criteria for all judges in the country, making it no longer possible to prosecute any woman who has an abortion without violating the criteria of the court and the Constitution. A number of US states have recently taken steps to restrict women's access to abortion, particularly Texas, which last week enacted a sweeping ban on abortions after the first 6 weeks of pregnancy, when the US Supreme Court declined to intervene. The ruling may lead to many US women in states such as Texas deciding to travel south of the border to terminate their pregnancies. Massive crowds took to the streets in cities across Brazil yesterday to support Brazilian President Bolsonaro ahead of next year's election. The marches, organised on the country's Independence Day, also called for reform of the country's Supreme Court, deemed by Bolsonaro supporters to be in cahoots with corrupt factions of the country's political elite. Supporters of the president marched in a show of support following his recent criticism of the country's Supreme Court. The court has resisted Bolsonaro's attempt to introduce paper voting receipts as a backup to an electronic voting system which he says is vulnerable to fraud. Bolsonaro supporters pointed to the example of Jason Miller, a former Trump aide and founder of the new social media site Getter, who was detained in Brazil on the order of Alexander de Moraes, a justice of the Supreme Court. The controversial judge suspects that Miller has been participating in anti-democratic acts while attending the CPAC. Bolsonaro supporters argue that the judicial system is full of power-crazed elitists. Enough of all this injustice, wrongful trials, arrests that shouldn't have been made. That is why I'm here. I don't want my son to live in such a haphazard country. Bolsonaro supporters fear that the election result next year could be falsified if measures aren't taken to safeguard it. People are tired. I think we are here to get rid of the corrupt people who have only caused damage to us. I support Bolsonaro. The election will take place in the autumn, with the president being elected for a 4-year term. Moroccans started voting today in a parliamentary election under new rules that were expected to make it much harder for the moderate Islamist PJD to remain as the biggest party. Though election polls are banned, analysts expect the PJD to lose ground to its more pro-establishment rivals, the RNI and PAM parties, which define themselves as social democrats. Mexico is a constitutional monarchy where the king holds sweeping powers. He picks the prime minister from the party that wins most seats in parliament and appoints key ministers. The palace also sets the economic agenda for the country of 37 million people and has commissioned a new development model that the new government is asked to implement. The monarchy's dominant role means political parties espouse similar platforms focusing on education, health, employment and social welfare. The monarchy is also viewed as the only power that can hold Islamists away from power. I aspire for them to serve the nation so it develops and flourishes. We are looking for a better government than the previous one. To be honest, I am not convinced of the previous government's work, and I want the next government to serve our nation and save the people. Despite having been the largest party since 2011, the PJD has failed to stop laws it opposes, including one to bolster the French language in education and another to allow cannabis for medical use. The new voting rules, seen by PJD leaders as having been introduced specifically to target their majority, change the way seats are allocated, making it harder for large parties to gain many seats. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.